We have one more question, and I've saved the best for last.
0% of you are subscribed. Fix that.
From Migraine Sufferer. I thought I'd try my luck, getting ahead of the pack and sending you a question. My biggest question for leftists is how they can support mass immigration and amnesty while claiming to be pro-worker and pro-environment. The influx of cheap labor caused by immigration hurts the middle and lower classes more than any other demographic. While working in construction, I saw non-union bosses use cheap, illegal labor to cut costs. These were projects that were happening in minority communities that could have produced jobs in these areas, but instead used foreign labor at prices no one in that community could work for. On this site, there were even protests by community leaders to the practice. Even with legal immigrant labor through H-1B visas, the recipients are paid 10% less than the industry average, and huge mega corporations pocket the difference. How can somebody graduating with college debt compete with that? With the environment, many organizations like the Sierra Club were anti-immigration in the 1980s. This was because they saw it as prolonging of cheap labor and a recipe for vast stretches of hovercrowding and resource consumption. How is supplying mega farms with seasonal labor good for anyone but those corporations? My ideal solution is cracking down on legal and illegal immigration. This cuts off the supply of cheap labor, meaning construction sites have to hire people in the communities they're building in, forces corporations to hire out-of-college graduates at a living wage, cuts down on urban sprawl, slumlords, and resource consumption. Okay. The downsides to this would be that goods get more expensive, but I think that's a good price to pay for your community to be able to sustain itself. All right. So we got a couple of points to break down here. First of all, because I want citizenship for all of the people in this country, or at the very least, I want a path to citizenship. You can't blame me or lefties or whatever for our positions on illegal immigration. I do think it's a travesty that illegal immigrants are paid under the table, a quarter the wages of their legal compatriots, but I don't want there to be any illegal immigrants. I want them legal. So that's, not not something that I can really address. I'm not defending that at all. With regards to the influx of immigration hurting middle and lower class workers, that is actually not the case. I've gone over data point after data point after data point on this. The only American demographic whose wages are lowered by the influx of immigration are domestic workers who dropped out of high school. That's it. Everything past that point, everything past that, high school graduation and onwards, wages rise. And the reason why wages rise is because in a market economy, labor is a resource. The more workers you have in your country, the more access you have to labor. It means that there are more mouths to feed. It means there are more houses that need to be built. It's a resource that leads to an increase in the productive functionality of the country. And that means more jobs, and that means more managerial jobs, especially since immigrants tend not to come in right away as managers. They may not speak English that well, or they may just not be as high skilled as the domestic workers. That means an increase in higher managerial roles. And then there's other work too, electricians, plumbers. Everything gets better the more people there are in this country, assuming that we're working within the capacity for productive growth, which in America we are. We have a very large country, like space-wise, and it's very, very sparsely populated compared to many other parts of the world. Now, this isn't the case in like inner city New York. Obviously, the population density there is insane, but generally speaking, in this country, we can handle more people. So there are, of course, some people who are hurt by this. High school dropouts are people too. However, there is another benefit to immigration, and it is enormous, immeasurable corporate wealth. Now, as a leftist, I don't give a fuck about corporations. Why not just take the money away from those corporations and use that to feed back into social benefits that disproportionately help the poor, the uneducated, and the unemployed? Why not just tax them more? Like, if we can make society better for almost everyone, except for high school dropouts, and in the process raise trillions of dollars that we can then reinvest into society in a way that benefits the high school dropouts more than they would have benefited if they had just been able to get a job because there were no immigrants in the first place. We've made everybody better off. We've made everybody better off. Even the high school dropouts, the immigrants too, everybody is better off. There's a fundamental misconception in your email, and it's something that that nationalists really bug me about. And it's that I'm pro-worker. That doesn't just mean American worker. You say right here, I only began caring about politics in 2016 with Trump and only saw my politics reflected when I started watching Tucker Carlson in 2017. Please, Tucker Carlson is a corporate simp. That motherfucker is about as populist as the Murdoch who controls him. But if you're pro-worker, you can't just be pro-American worker. It doesn't end here at the border. You say that you want jobs to go to the people who live in those communities. Dudes, immigrants, legal or illegal, live in the communities they work in. If you've worked at a construction site and they start paying illegal immigrants under the table, those illegal immigrants live in your community. They pay state taxes. They're there. They pay income tax. They pay gas tax. They're there in your community. They provide, they live. Those are your neighbors. Those are the people you wave at when you walk out your front door to go to the car. Yeah, they, excuse me. So your suggestion that immigrants are like these other things that show up and they're not a part of the real community, I just don't think that's true. If an immigrant comes here and lives in Los Angeles for 12 years, that motherfucker is every bit as American as me when I was 12. More so, because they had a choice to come here, you know? If a person risks crossing the border to live in Los Angeles and then works for landscaping, they worked to get here in America? I was just born here. I don't give a fuck. I have money. I could go move to New Zealand or Canada. They chose to come here. They're more of an American than I am. And if they work and they're getting paid under the table, they're getting underpaid, that's fucked up. So let's get them citizenship. Let's get them registered, at least, or get a green card or whatever, so they can be paid a proper amount. And then nobody's getting undercut. You don't like that immigrants aren't paid as much? We can work on that through policy. But why make immigrants the enemy, dude? That's the lie you're being sold right now. You're being sold anti-immigration, but you're being told that it's pro-worker. This isn't pro-worker. This is just anti-immigration. If you really wanted pro-worker takes, I mean, we can get pro-worker. We can talk pro-worker. We can talk about democratizing the workplace. We can talk about radical unionization. Does Tucker Carlson talk about unions? Unions are the #1 way of ensuring workers' rights in the country. I notice he doesn't talk about them that much. Maybe a reason for that. Maybe because his Murdoch, his boss, the guy who he said he is honored to be caned by, reflects the business interests of the people in this country. It's just interesting that these billionaires are selling you workers' rights ideas that don't include unionization, but do include getting rid of immigrants. I'm encouraging you to think about that. There are problems with how immigration is handled in this country, and there are negative consequences to immigration. But there are many positives as well. And in my mind, and from the research I've seen, those positives vastly outweigh the negatives by orders of magnitude, by huge, huge, huge orders of magnitude. It's just a matter of where those benefits go. And because of people like Murdoch, and because of people like Tucker Carlson, those benefits tend to go to the wealthy. But they don't have to. We can fix that. We're capable of fixing that. And that's the pro-worker position. Workers of the world unite, you know?